The Super Nintendo marked a rather colossal step upwards from the 8-bit days of the 80s into a brand new realm of enhanced graphics, sound, Mode 7 capabilities, and more. It wasn't the only console to do so, nor was it the most powerful or even the first, but what cannot be argued is that Nintendo pulled out all the stops to create the most compelling library of the day. The TurboGrafx was a cut above technologically, but the price point put a lot of folks off, and simply put, it just didn't have the games to compete. Sega's Genesis marked the high point of that company's existence, running neck and neck with the SNES and even outpacing it in certain parts of the world. Anecdotally, lots more of my friends had a Mega Drive than a SNES. We were all about that blue hedgehog in the UK. Video gaming has always had this weird, tribalistic element to it. Still does, despite the differences between the newest Sony or Microsoft consoles being basically negligible, and console exclusives being less and less impressive these days. Unless, of course, you only buy Nintendo consoles. Yes, that one mainstay of gaming that has prevailed since the early 80s, when all others fell to the wayside, has maintained its ruthless grasp on its particular demographic by ensuring it had just different enough priorities to the other guys. Gameplay over graphics, family fun over more adult-oriented titles, and so on. And of course, a chokehold over its own unique IPs absolutely doesn't hurt. As long as Nintendo hold their exclusive rights to Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Kirby, and so on, no one's going to be able to touch them. The benefits of being software as well as hardware developers cannot be understated. In the 90s, exclusivity rights for massive games like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and Earthbound were a large part of why people in the US would choose Nintendo over Sega. We didn't get any of them in Europe, which goes some way to explain Sega's prevalence over here. As well as that though, the SNES did so well because of the super high quality of entries in its original series, and the introduction of a few others. Super Metroid took that franchise to an entirely new level. Mario had about 1 million pretty decent entries and spin-offs. A Link to the Past remains to this day one of the best games ever created. We'd see the first Star Fox title, a 3D shoot-'em-up the likes of which had never really been seen before, the groundwork for which was laid by the Game Boy title X, but that's another story. However, a new original property that is perhaps not talked about quite as much as any of those, but certainly showed off the new console's capabilities as well as anything did, is 1990's F-Zero, a futuristic 3D-style racing game. If you spend the time to analyze the graphics in F-Zero, they start to become quite a bit less impressive. To do so, though, would be to completely miss the point. Sure, the textures are grainy and flat, but when you couple them with the sheer velocity of the gameplay, it really works. Adds to it, if anything. When the new Game Boy Advance was announced, it must have raised more than a few eyebrows when Nintendo revealed an F-Zero entry as a launch title. But hey, they managed it once. If anyone could repeat the feat, it'd be Nintendo. Lore-wise, yeah, there is a story here, wouldn't you know? We pick up the series around 25 years after the N64 version. The legend of Captain Falcon has encouraged a whole new generation of pilots to take up the helmet and challenge the extreme speed sport. You'll sign your name and take your position in the vehicle of your choice on the grid in Pawn class, hoping to take that division by storm and move up the ranks to Knight and Bishop class. Dominate them all to unlock the Premier Queen class, a real challenge. You'll have to compete in 5 races per tournament and have 5 lives to try to make it into the top 3 positions. The tournaments all have their own unique tracks, and you can challenge any competition in 4 difficulty levels from beginner to master. You can unlock new pilots and vehicles with enhanced stats and skills. Each race starts with 15 competitors, which gets whittled down to 10 at the end of the first lap. Don't find yourself in position 11 through 15, else your race is over. This will then drop on subsequent laps to 7, 5, and then a final 3. Make the checkered flag in the top 3 positions to qualify for the next race. Each track and difficulty combination has 10 slots to save best lap times, so for those of you who really enjoy the grind of practicing and shaving tenths of seconds off your fastest, can really go for it here. This is added to by the multiplayer hookup, which lets you combine records, as well as saving the fastest laps of any multiplayer races you have. If you're good enough to dominate the charts of your friend's cartridge, I imagine that'd be some serious bragging rights. The track layouts feel new, they're not recycled from any earlier game as far as I can tell. You'll still be familiar with their details. The jumps, boosts, and slow areas are all well considered in that the tracks are accessible straight away, but also offer plenty of opportunity to refine your best lines. You have a power gauge in the upper right corner of the screen, which will deplete when you crash into stuff and will eventually cause you to implode if it empties entirely. Try to drive through the glowing green pit lane at one side of the home straight. This will replenish your gauge more the longer you manage to stay in it, and you don't have to slow down or anything. Hold A to accelerate and B to brake. You probably won't want to brake at first, but on later tracks it becomes necessary to avoid pinballing all over the place. The shoulder buttons will angle your engines to the left or right, which allow you to drift one way or the other, tightening your cornering angle. It's not a required skill to utilize at first, but you'll not beat the higher levels easily without the advantage that this provides. Pressing L and R together activates a boost, which gives you a real push if used prudently on the long straight sections. You can store up to 3 boosts at any one time and earn another for every completed lap, so don't worry about saving them all that much. L and R together worked for me, but you do have the option of switching boost to the up direction if you choose. I found I was activating it when I didn't mean to, but you might prefer it. There are some more advanced controls as well. Time your A presses with the starting countdown, don't just hold the button. This way you'll get a real boost at the start, which can immediately hamper you if you don't nail it. It's not hard to do, just sometimes hard to remember to do. A really useful strat to master is the rocket turn. Just tap the A button as you turn into a corner. This provides added traction and control. The vehicles all handle very differently. Some really slide across the track, whereas others corner more tightly. It's up to your own playstyle which is better. They all have their advantages and ways to master. Each track has its own pumping race theme, which are again original rather than recycled, and while perhaps not songs you'll be humming for ages after turning the game off, they're all effective in setting the race atmosphere. As with the SNES version of F-Zero, the game's graphics look most impressive when you're not looking at them, if that makes any sense. The balance between beauty and practicality was achieved really well, as was the case with a couple of other early GBA racing games like GT Advance and Mario Kart, whereby just enough of the Mode 7 styled 3D world was implemented to make it immersive and to conjure up the impression of speed. It's a hard thing to put your finger on exactly, just know that it really does work. We'll get another 2 F-Zero games before this library is done as well, so this debut title must have gone down pretty well.